Welcome, everyone. This is the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, and we are here for May, which is Sexual Assault Prevention Month. For this week, we are focusing for Sexual Assault Prevention Month more on certain populations and how they are experiencing sexual violence and what Sexual Assault Prevention Month looks like to them. Throughout this month, on our various social media pages, we have fundraisers available and giveaways occurring, so be sure to check in. Hashtag no one asked for it, hashtag Sexual Assault Prevention Month, hashtag Friday NM still, and of course, hashtag still need consent. So my name is Alicia Fisher. I'm the Prevention Education Supervisor with the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. And today I am joined by our clinical counselor, Ashley. Hello and welcome.
Hi, Alicia. Thanks for having me today.
Amazing. Okay, Ashley, can you talk about the incredible amount of work that you do for our center and who you predominantly serve?
Sure, absolutely. So, like Alicia said, my name's Ashley. I'm a registered social worker and one of the clinical counselors at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. And in my work, I do work with survivors of sexual violence across the whole spectrum, across the whole population, but I do a lot of specific work with post-secondary students. So students specifically that attend Trent University and Fleming College here in Peterborough, as well as some other institutions and post-secondary schools across the province. And in my work, I do individual counseling, I provide group services, some of our intake services, really do a little bit of everything, seeing lots of different people, but I do get the privilege to do a lot of work with post-secondary students.
All right. So before we talk about the clients you work with, and of course, specifically post-secondary students, I want to hear about, what does Sexual Assault Prevention Month mean to you?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think in the work that we do here at our center, I would say that for myself and probably a lot of our staff members here, we are thinking about sexual assault prevention every single month of the year. So it's the work that we do day in and day out, all of our staff and volunteers here. So it's not just the month of May that we're thinking about this work, but it is really important during the month of May that we share and spread lots of information with the community and with the public and with our supporters and clients about what this month means. So for me specifically, I think it's an opportunity for us to reflect on what we need to continue doing in our work and in the community to continue to foster and strengthen and create a culture of consent. And to me, that means really understanding and reflecting on the ways in which sexual violence, sexual assault, and rape culture really is apparent and evident and appears in our day-to-day lives. So for me personally, this month means lots of reflecting on that. It means thinking about who's included right now currently and also who's missing from conversations about sexual violence and the prevention of sexual violence. So that's really important to me this month is trying to amplify the conversation about sexual violence and also amplify voices that really need and deserve to be heard, but may not be heard all the time when we're talking about sexual violence and sexual assault and its prevention. So as we know, sexual violence happens to anyone and can happen to anyone, but that people who are marginalized, racially marginalized or marginalized by gender, sexuality, physical ability, any kind of ability, by income, by language,
Indigeneity.
Absolutely. By culture, anyone that's marginalized is more likely to experience sexual violence. And the stats definitely show that, but also, again, back to that reflecting on who's included and who's missing from the stats that we have in our community, in our province, in our country, about sexual violence. So yeah, that's really what this month means to me. And I think that, the last year and a bit now that we've been living through the COVID-19 pandemic, it's important that we recognize the intersections of the pandemic with sexual violence. And Alicia, I've heard you mention this in some of your other interviews and other public education and prevention education that you do in our community, talking about that we're living through a pandemic right now, but there is a epidemic of sexual violence that is occurring inside and within the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think we would be amiss to not include and discuss that. So going back to what this month means to me, it also means we need to reflect on how the COVID-19 pandemic has intersected with sexual violence in our community and across all areas.
So bringing the conversation back then to post-secondary students, there was a survey released very as a general summary of sexual violence and what post-secondary students experience. I'm going to throw these numbers out here, Ashley, and then hear about why this discussion about sexual violence is important for students. So at Trent University, approximately 69% of students have experienced sexual harassment. At Fleming College, 55%. At Trent University, 82% of students have witnessed sexual harassment, 73% at Fleming. At Trent University, 28% of students have been stalked. At Fleming College, the number is 25%. I think the number that really, all of them are quite shocking, but this last one here, Trent University, 31% of students have experienced non-consensual sex, which is another, it's kind of a nice way of saying sexual assault and perhaps rape. And at Fleming, that number is 24%. So Ashley, within Sexual Assault Prevention Month and sexual violence, why are these discussions more important, maybe even now more than ever, for these students?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for presenting those statistics. And just wanted to reference that they're from a 2019 study by the Ontario government called the Student Voices on Sexual Assault Survey that surveyed students across all post-secondary institutions across the province. And yeah, so thank you for highlighting those stats that directly are related to our community and the institutions that we have here. So we also know that, in talking about or thinking about why are discussions of sexual violence important for young adults, well, we also know that the highest rate of sexual assault and sexual violence occurs for folks ages 15 to 24. And that's really who make up the big majority of post-secondary students in colleges and universities. So, this is where the violence is happening. So that's why it's really important for these discussions to take place. We know that, there's so many people experiencing sexual violence and sexual assault, young people in colleges and universities. But there's a lot of shame and stigma that exists. And that really wraps the topic up then in silence. We don't talk about it enough. I believe it's not talked about, on campuses or in these schools as much as it's happening. And that silence is really, it's silent, but it speaks so loud to survivors of sexual violence. And it really tells survivors that their experiences shouldn't be talked about, or that, it's not something to reach out for help around, that
you're causing drama, unnecessary work.
Absolutely. So the silence is so loud. And the silence also then lets perpetrators know that they're maybe not going to be challenged or disciplined or, nothing's going to be done for their actions. So the silence is really, really problematic. So that's why it is so important that we have these discussions. You talked, Alicia, about, I think you said the stat was 82% of folks at Trent University, for example, have stated that
Witness.
they've witnessed some kind
Mhm.
of sexual violence. That's a huge number of people. And then it really makes us think, that's a large opportunity then for those 82% of people perhaps to do some kind of intervention or do something about what they're witnessing, whether that means taking care of themselves,
Mhm.
because we know that there's lots of opportunity for vicarious trauma in witnessing that violence and harassment. So there's opportunity for that intervention to take care of themselves. And also is there opportunity to intervene and support and help and stand up and speak up for others.
Mhm.
So that's again why we need to have these discussions with young people, with university and college students. One other point I wanted to mention is that on university and college campuses across the province, across the country, there's lots of talk or this notion of creating safe spaces on campus and in residence buildings and within academics, creating safe spaces for people. The reality is that a large percent of these instances of sexual assault and sexual violence are happening on campuses and happening in residence buildings and are happening by perpetrators who are known to the survivors.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, I have to wonder or question or reflect on what does it mean to create a safe space on a university or college campus?
Mhm.
Um, what does that look like? Is that possible? Safety is such a subjective experience.
Mhm.
So, for us to say there's a safe space somewhere, what does that actually mean? What does that look like in practice? Who is it safe for? Who
Mm.
isn't safe for? Are survivors and folks who've experienced sexual violence, are they being included in discussions and conversations and development of these safe spaces and in the policies and procedures that exist on campuses? Who's being involved in creating those? And just, I think we have lots of work to do on what it means to have a safe space and thinking about what that might look like and if that's possible. And we still have so much work to do. So that's why I think these discussions are really important for young people.
And I don't know if people know this, but our center was created as a response to sexual violence occurring on campus. So our center was created by student survivors of sexual violence. So, these conversations are so important. And I only am even more curious now, Ashley, about this intersection of COVID-19. I'm also a student, and everything has gone online back home. And I'm curious about what has it been like for students that you've been working with, especially with the intersections of being back home and accessing supports. What are some questions you're experiencing or statements that you're hearing from students?
Yeah, definitely. Like we said, a huge impact with the COVID-19 pandemic. So everyone will remember back last March when things really shut down and changed almost overnight.
Hmm.
And schools, post-secondary schools went virtual within a day or two, or however quickly that happened. And it meant that students that were living in residence buildings at their schools went home really quickly. They couldn't access their teachers or professors or counselors or support people in person anymore. And there was, we all lived through this. There was no warning or there was no preparation time. It happened really quick. And for a lot of the students that I've worked with over the past year, it meant that maybe they moved back to their hometowns or home areas where there isn't safety for them or there's less safety for them. They maybe went back to places where their experiences of harm and assault took place, maybe back to places where the perpetrators that have harmed them live or continue to live. Um, so that had lots of implications.
Hmm.
If they were seeing counselors in person or were accessing support services in person, and that was a big part of their healing and a big part of their work, then all of a sudden those weren't accessible in the same way that they had been in the past when most services changed to virtual. So there's definitely lots of implications, and yeah, I think we just need to be aware of that and think about how that has impacted students.
Definitely. Yeah. Something even I've heard is, if I'm a Fleming student, but I'm home in India, or I'm down back home in Waterloo, can I still access Fleming supports? And I say yes, 100%. You can still access those supports as a student of that college or university that you're part of. And so, Ashley, as we're getting to the wrap up time here, I wonder, what is your message for students who are survivors currently in school and navigating the uncertainties and hopefulness maybe of going back in person in September? What are your messages to survivors who are students right now?
Well, I think my messaging and the messaging from our center here is that you're not alone, that we believe you, we're here for you. And so, when things are challenging, when you might be struggling, or when things are, going well and you want to celebrate that, and we are here for you. We're not alone. Please reach out to our center, on our three different 24/7 crisis support lines. Reach out to the support people at your school, and know that you're not alone and that we're here to support you. And that, because we haven't been able to meet in person very often the last year, we're still here and virtual and always available, and will continue to be. So please reach out to us, and know that we believe you and we're here.
And Ashley, one more question. What's your message for their friends? What's the message for the supporters of survivors in community, or if you feel like a friend's struggling with whatever they're going through, what's your message to the supporters?
Same thing, we're here for you as well. So our services are not just for survivors themselves, but if you're supporting a friend or a loved one or a partner or a family member, you're always welcome. And please do reach out and contact our center. We're here to support you. We want to make sure you can take care of yourself while you're taking care of the people that you love and support. And I guess I want to thank all the supporters, because you are doing such a great job, and you're such a fundamental piece of the puzzle of this, what this whole month is about: preventing sexual assault and preventing sexual violence, and supporting folks that have experienced harm. So thank you for the support that you provide, but know that it's also important to take care of yourself, and that's what we're here to do as well. So reach out to us.
As Ashley mentioned, we have 3 lines of 24/7 crisis support available, whether that be over the phone, text, or our web chat, which can be accessed through a desktop, laptop, or even on your phone. We also have our social media accounts that have lots of opportunities, lots of videos. I know Ashley's in a video there talking about grounding strategies on our YouTube. So be sure to check all of those out. And Ashley, thank you so much for joining us in this really important conversation.
Thanks, Alicia. It's great to chat about these things, and I'm looking forward to everything else that KSEC's doing for the rest of May, and of course throughout the whole year.